Social anxiety. It's the curse that a lot of us as human beings face. We struggle with it. A lot of us struggled more than others with it. What exactly is social anxiety? Where does it come from? How do you even begin to start getting over it? What are you supposed to do with this struggle, this hurdle that we face? Social anxiety is a very crippling feeling that we get when we are doubtful about ourselves, when we don't believe in who we are, when we're constantly focusing on ourselves versus focusing on the people that we're trying to connect with. These connections can be either casual, they could be with our family, our friends, but it all stems from us worrying about who we are or who we think people think we are. And these thoughts, these worries, these concerns can either come from us choosing to think about these things or something that's rooted deep within us from either trauma or just lack of confidence, anything where it causes us to just be worried and nervous and anxious about what we're doing or who we are around other people. I would say the biggest thing that causes social anxiety and worry and fear and self-doubt and all those horrible things is the fact that we're always trying to control what other people are thinking about us. Or we go into social situations expecting a certain outcome and trying to force a certain outcome, and it just makes us spiral. Let's say you have something like a crush, right? And you're like a really young person, right? You're in high school, college, whatever, and you have a crush on a girl or a boy you may like. And when you have a crush on someone, that comes with a certain amount of expectation. Like you're already putting that person or that situation in a higher plane in your head, expecting something to come out of that person or situation, such as love or relationship. So when you go to interact with that person, you're all feared and anxiety and anxious and just feeling all these bad things that are making you just nervous because you're trying to go into a situation, talking to someone, interacting with someone because you're trying to get an outcome that you want. That's the first aspect is when you move through life and you're dealing with other people, you have to let go of the expectation of outcomes. You have to just be yourself. You have to just go through and hope for the best and try to make that meaningful connection with someone. You can't just constantly try and force a situation to come forward. And that leads me to my second point is about social anxiety is that a lot of the times too when people experience such strong feelings of being anxious around other people or connecting with other people is because they don't know who they are. They don't believe in themselves. You have people that are trying to constantly be something that they're not in their heads. They think they should be a certain way. They think they should act a certain way. And I will say that social media has driven this whole mirage of trying to be someone else up like 1,000 to 1,000,000%. It's made people really self-conscious about who they are. And you have to come to terms with, you have to accept the fact that you're always going to be who you are. You can improve yourself in various ways. You can go out, you can, increase your education, you can go out and try to build muscle. You can do these things that are good for you and will increase your, I guess, your happiness and maybe quality of life on this earth. But you're always going to be you. You're never going to be someone else. And that's the problem with when you're approaching someone with that mindset. It's like when you're trying to talk to someone and you don't know or feel who you are, you don't believe in yourself, you're worrying about what that person may judge you, or you're thinking that person may be judging the ideal you have in your head to who you actually are. And the truth of the matter is that that's not true. Everyone's kind of dealing with their own problems. Everyone has their own ideal that they're trying to deal with, and they're not worried about you. You have to come to terms with you. You have to be comfortable with who you are. You know, you have to love yourself. And that's never going to happen if you're constantly comparing yourself to other people and to where other people are at. That's something that I've always struggled with, and something I've been getting over recently is, you know, accepting who I am. You know, we're all put here for a reason, for different reasons, for different purposes, for different trajectories. We're all going down our own paths at different and varying rates of speed, you know, and it's for a reason, because if everyone was the same, if everyone had the same circumstances, were the same thing, life would be absolutely boring, and it would be purposeless, meaningless in many ways. And that's the thing, is just you have to relax into who you are, because you're different. You're you. You offer something that no one else can, and that's who you are, because there's no one else like you on the planet. You've lived different experiences than everyone else. We might have similar things in common with each other, but you have a completely different experience, and that's awesome. You don't want to try and have someone else's I don't care how successful, how rich, how much of what you think you want or what you crave or envy inside another person, or an idol that you've made up in your head or you've seen on social media, what they may have. At the end of the day, you want to have your own. You want to be yourself. That's so much better than trying to copy off what someone else has done or trying to be what someone else is. Because you don't know what that person that you've idolized in your head is doing. You don't know what that person may be going through, or how that person got to that spot, or if that person's even happy with their image, and and maybe they're trying to compare it to someone else that's completely, to compare what they're trying to be to someone else who is completely the opposite of them, because they think where they're at is trash and you're idolizing them, and you trying to be them, or you feeling like you're not living up to that person or that ideal or that idol in your head, makes you anxious. It all comes back to down to, you have to be comfortable with yourself. Because when you're comfortable with yourself, and you're comfortable with who you are, when you approach people, that comes off of you. You're not thinking about what they're thinking about you. You're not worrying about that. You're just being you. You're conversating. You're focusing more on the person you're trying to talk to. And that's the key. You have to stop focusing on yourself so much and worrying about who you may be in terms of what another person thinks. That's the key. And coming to that point in life can take a really long time. Like I said, especially if you've dealt with trauma, like if you were bullied, or if you have like trauma to where you maybe have been abandoned, or you never got like felt like you've got loved in your life or anything like that, you know. It all comes down to just, finding out who that is, who you are. And that's really hard for people that are younger. You know, I'm pretty young. I'm still trying to figure out who I am. I'm I think I'm coming closer. I know I have a long way to go and a lot of things to experience, but you know, I I'm coming closer to, knowing who I really am, you know, and my own experience with social anxiety, I've always, I'm not going to say always, but for a large part of my life, I've lacked the confidence and comfortability with myself, and the love I should have had for myself, for a while. Like, even doing something like this, like talking to you and turning on the camera, and talking into this camera, or into this microphone, and speaking to you directly, is something that wouldn't even been possible for me, you know, a few months ago. And but it's something I realize, and this is also, I would say, the third biggest key in getting over social anxiety, is you have to realize that what you're fearful of is nowhere near as bad or as dangerous or as horrible as the fear or the regret of not doing something. In other words, it's like a hierarchy of fear in your mind. As weird as that counterintuitive as that sounds, you shouldn't be. We're trying to avoid fear, but that's the truth. It's like life is about other people. Life is all about the connections, the meaningful connections we make with all kinds of people, our family, our friends, our coworkers, our classmates, whoever, and when you are burdened with social anxiety, essentially what that means is that you're fearful of doing those things, of talking to people, like all the things I stated before, of like worrying about what they may think about you. But the thing is, and I think this gets more clear as you get older, is that you have to realize that your fear of trying to go out and make those meaningful connections with people is much, much, much worse and much more harmful and has the potential for way more chaos long term than you not trying to go out and make those connections. You have to realize that. You have to be shaken to your core and realize that life is about other people and that we as humans are risky to deal with, period. Like we're risky people. Like anytime you deal with another human being, there's going to be risk involved. There's going to be the fear of what they may think about you or how they may judge you. Like that's always going to be involved. And when you come to accept the fact that, everyone's different and everyone's going to view you differently, you get over that. Like it's like, okay, because you start to understand that we need to talk to each other. We have to try and make connections, you know, and the only way we're going to do that is by taking the risk to go and taking that risk and going with that, in spite of the fear of how we may feel about or what we may think that person may think about us or how they're going to react to just who we are and getting over that and trying to make that meaningful connection. We realize that that's way more important than that fear, because if you don't try and make those connections because you're fearful of what they may think, and you don't try and go out there and put yourself out there with other people, you risk, going through life alone. Or a lot of people are alone. I'm not saying being alone is a bad thing, but when we're integrated properly into society with our friends and family, like, you don't really think about the meaning of life when that happens. Like when you're constantly overthinking and being socially anxious and in your head, you're always like thinking like, why am I living? Like, what's the purpose of life? Or and this, that, and the other. Like, you kind of spiral. And when you have like people that you're connected with, in society, like I said, whether that be your coworkers or friends or family, it kind of keeps you sane because you start to realize something that miraculous happens when you're having like an engaging conversation or meaningful interaction with someone. And it's like you start to live in the moment and you're relieved of that burden of trying to think about those things. You don't think about what the purpose of is. You're living that purpose. You're living in that meaning, you know? And once you take that first step and you finally figure out that you want to go out and make these connections, it's like with my experience, it's like an upward exponentially increasing, you know, good thing. You make more connections. You have opportunities that come at you from people that you wouldn't have ever heard of or received or expected if you were just to stay in your shell. And that's kind of the point. That's the adventure of your life. Go out and explore and accept the risk, because if you live your life in fear like that, you're going to look back and you're going to regret it. I mean, everyone has fear. Don't get me wrong. Like, fear is natural. I'm not even saying fear is a bad thing. Like, If it inhibits you, I mean, that's bad if you let it inhibit you, but everyone experiences fear. The thing is that you have to face that fear. You have to be brave. If you're scared of, the more you're scared of something, the more you should face it in a healthy way, you know? And I'm not talking about like being dumb or, you know, like if you see fire, like, and you jump in a fire or something like that, you know, like people, that isn't being fearful. Like, that isn't fear, that's instinct. You shouldn't touch a burning stove or whatever. You shouldn't jump into lava. But I mean like being fearful of things that people do all the time that, you know, that is part of a functioning society, like interacting with other people. Like if you're fearful of that, that means you should go do it and go try. You have to lay out a plan. And sometimes, I mean, you can't even plan it perfectly. Sometimes it's just best to jump out and do it. And like I said, you face, maybe someone does think you're weird, or someone does think a way about you that you don't like that they express to you. And when that happens, it's easy to get in your head and think, "Oh, this is, I knew I shouldn't have done this," and then you can either let that crush you, or what you should do is take that experience and understand that everyone's different, and that everyone perceives you is going to perceive you different. And that's a good thing. It's a spice of life, as cliche as that sounds. So yeah, that's my recipe, I would say, for you to get over social anxiety. Like I said, it's normal, it's human. I've dealt with it most of my life. The past year, past couple years, but I would say really within like the past year to 6 months to a year, I've been taking those risks. I say risks. I mean, now they don't feel like risks, but at first they were. But taking those chances and trying to put myself out there and meet more people. And I mean, for me, it's been wonderful. Um, it's allowed me to see things in ways I never would have seen them before. It's allowed me to ask questions I never would have thought of before. I don't abandon who I am, but it allows my frame to interact with how other people's frames are, like their frames of understanding. You know, and it's just it's amazing. It's like I said, it's the adventure of your life, and you can't be afraid of, you can't, just because you're afraid of that, you can't let that stop yourself. Like I said, you have to be comfortable with who you are. You have to stop thinking about what other people may be thinking about you. You have to relax and understand and let go of outcomes. And you have to understand that the fear of you have to understand that the fear of taking the risk of talking to new people or trying to make connections with others is nowhere near as bad as the outcome of not doing those things, of the regret you may face, or the hole you could find yourself in, the void, the dark void, because you're not integrated properly with other people, and the potential loss of opportunities. That's another thing. That's something else that's interesting. I'll throw in there before I end the video. Is and this sounds weird, but this may sound weird, but a way that you really find yourself is and know who you are, or start to discover who you are, is, I would say, it's a mix of two things. One is self-reflection, but a bigger part I would say is interacting with people or putting yourself in new situations, uh, different situations, and those interactions that you have when you put yourself in new situations or different situations around different people, they kind of like signal to you when you're interacting with them about like who you are. Like I said, something you may be interacting with a kind of person that you like, just a person, like different kinds of people from all kinds of different walks of life, and them talking to you and you interacting with them kind of like spark something within you that you may have never even thought of before, that may lead you closer to finding out who you are, who you truly are. You know, it's things like that. And like I said, you just have to go out there and face, be brave. And the only way you're going to do that is by putting yourself out there. Go talk to people, you know. But yeah, I wanted to get that video out there. I know a lot of people are dealing with that, so I hope this helps. Yeah, peace.